your Bibles to Genesis chapter 8. We've been talking about the flood. We know that it rained for 20 days and 20 nights. We talked about Alvin, Texas last year, which has the record rainfall for the United States, 49 inches in a 24-hour period. In 40 days, that would have been 143 feet for rain if it would have kept going like that. So we know it probably rained at least that hard during those times, if not harder. Matter of fact, we know that the sky was full of water. God had made it where it held all this water, and all that water just dumped out. Plus, the water erupted from the subterranean water supplies in the earth. So it wasn't just the rain, it was also the water coming up from the earth. The ark floated for 150 days before they began to see peaks sticking up. That's 5 straight months. Like I said, could you imagine being stuck on a boat with a bunch of animals? And thank goodness you had children, because guess who got to do all the shovel duties, I would imagine. Imagine that was their delegated duties. I would imagine that that's not the same Mount Ararat it landed on that we have today. I don't know, I remember when I was back, probably maybe in junior high or high school, they had a mission that went to the border of Turkey and Russia, where Mount Ararat stands today. And they were looking for the ark, and they actually found some wood up there that they thought was close, and they thought, oh, we're onto something. Well, they've never found anything yet. I've seen satellite pictures, and people say, oh, here's the shape, it looks like it could have been a boat. And I just really think that the earth was not like it is now. We didn't have the big peaks we have, and we'll see here in Genesis today how that the earth was separated during a guy's life by the name of Peleg. And I believe that's when God pushed everything up and the earth was separated continents. We don't know, but we have to just kind of assume. But apparently it wasn't like it is now. So this flood covered everything. After 5 months, they began to see the land. And then it says that in Genesis 8, we'll read that God sent a wind plus the sun to evaporate all that water. So Genesis 8, chapter 1, I'm going to read through verse 14. It says, and this is the New Living Translation. But God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and the livestock that were with him in the ark. Isn't it nice God didn't forget him? Sometimes I think we feel like God forgets us sometimes, don't we? But God doesn't. It says, all the animals that were in the ark with him, and he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. Now the springs of the deep and the floodgates of the heavens had been closed, and the rain had stopped falling from the sky. The water receded steadily from the earth. At the end of 150 days, the water had gone down, and on the 17th day of the 17th month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. The waters continued to recede until the 10th month, and on the first day of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains became visible. After 40 days, Noah opened a window he had made in the ark and sent out a raven, and it kept flying back and forth until the water had dried up from the earth. Then he sent out a dove to see if the water had receded from the surface of the ground, but the dove could find nowhere to perch because there was water over all the surface of the earth. So it returned to Noah in the ark. He reached out his hand and took the dove and brought it back to himself in the ark. He waited 7 more days and again sent out the dove from the ark. When the dove returned to him in the evening, there was a beak, where there in its beak was a freshly plucked olive leaf. Then Noah knew that the water had receded from the earth. He waited 7 more days and sent the dove out again, but this time it did not return to him. By the first day of the month of Noah's 601st year, remember he went in the ark when he was 600. This is 601 years of his life. The water had dried up from the earth. Noah then removed the covering from the ark and saw that the surface of the ground was dry. By the 27th day of the 2nd month, the earth was completely dry. So they were in the ark for 1 year and 17 days altogether. And they finally came out. Well, there were 7 days before it began to rain, they went in. And then during the rain that began on the 17th day of the 2nd month when it began. And then it was the 27th day of the 2nd month the next year that they came out. So it was 117 years, or a year and 17 days they were in the ark.
It probably felt like 117.
Yeah, it probably did. Could you imagine, seriously? And being tossed to and fro by this water in that boat. And of course, they've done studies, and I think Penny was saying last week, there's no way you can sink that boat. You can't topple it over. And I've seen some models that they've made, and they've done TV shows about it. They show it in like really rough water like that, and it won't turn over. I mean, God knew exactly what he was doing, didn't he? He gives the directions.
No, it does.
Not exactly as many windows to look out either.
That's true.
That's true.
That's true. And you know what? It keeps the water out too. And I'm sure they didn't have bilge pumps back then.
Yeah.
So, all right, Genesis chapter 8, let's go into verse 15. It says, Then God said to Noah, Come out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and their wives, Bring out every kind of living creature that is with you, the birds, the animals, and all the creatures that move along the ground, so they can multiply on the earth and be fruitful and increase in number on it. So Noah came out together with his sons and his wives, and his wife and his sons' wives, all the animals and all the creatures that move along the ground and all the birds, everything that moves on land, came out of the ark, one kind after another. Then Noah built an altar. This is what I like. Noah built an altar to the Lord, and taking some of the clean animals and clean birds, he sacrificed burnt offerings on it. It says all of the clean animals, and the clean birds. He sacrificed burnt offerings on it. The Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, never again will I curse the ground because of humans, even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood. And never again will I destroy all living creatures as I've done. You know, I think sometimes we need to stop and build altars to the Lord. I think there's times that when we see God doing amazing things in our lives, that we need to stop and we need to make something in our life so we'll remember that.
Amen.
To sit down and, I mean, that ark, every time Noah would come across that, he would say, hey, this is the ark, or the altar I made when God delivered us. And we don't forget those things. I had the pleasure of leading a young man to the Lord Tuesday night, and I told him, I said, the first thing you need to do when you go home is to write your name, or to write the date and what happened to you tonight in your life. Because Satan's going to come to you and say, oh, you know what, that didn't really happen. You didn't really trust him. You didn't really accept the Lord. I mean, that's one of his tricks we know he does. So if you'll write that in your Bible, you've always got that. And I said, every time he brings that up, you just throw that in his face. Say, Satan, I did it for you, and this is maybe, and if you don't feel like it, you know. But we need to build altars. When great things happen, let's stop and let's just do something that's going to remind us of what God's done in our lives. Be creative, whatever it takes. Okay, let's go to verse 22. It says, as long as the earth, well, let's go back 20, verse 20. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and taking some of all the clean animals and clean birds, he sacrificed burnt offerings on it. The Lord smelled the pleasing aroma and said in his heart, never again will I curse the ground because of humans, even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood, and never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done. Verse 22, as long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease. Now, I don't know about you, but I wish winter would cease. Of course, that's one of the reasons I'm living in Florida, because winter's not much of a winter here. But no matter what happens, as long as the surface here, we're going to keep having day and night, cold and heat. It's not going to stop. That's what God set in order. Well, you know, a lot of times people say, well, you know, if you're a Christian, when you die, you'll go to heaven forever. That's not necessarily true either. The Bible tells us that when we die, we're instantly with the Lord. That's true, we're in heaven. But Jesus is coming back, right? Matter of fact, I heard something the other day that it was a quote, and I've never actually read the quote. He said that Martin Luther, the great church reformer in Germany, used to say, if you don't believe Jesus is coming back, you shouldn't even call yourself a Christian. Now, isn't that something? Because Jesus said he's coming back. But when he comes back, he's going to set up his kingdom here on earth for 1,000 years. We're going to rule and reign with him. Those of us in this church body that have served him and have been faithful, and according to our faithfulness, we're going to serve. We might be a mayor, we might be a city councilman, we might be a governor somewhere. It just depends how we faithful we were to God. After that 1,000 years, of course, during that 1,000 years, Satan's bound up in the bottomless pit. At the end of that 1,000 years, he's released. All the earthly people that are still living on the earth and raising children and all that kind of things that don't serve the Lord are going to hook up with him and try to defeat Jesus again, which, come on. I mean, it's like Satan when he fell. What are you thinking? I mean, especially Satan, when you're around the glory of God as an angel and you fall. That doesn't make sense, does it? Of course, I guess it's not supposed to. I don't know. So after that, the Bible says that we'll go with Jesus, we'll defeat that army, and then we'll be taken off the earth for a little bit, and then the Lord's going to recreate the earth, not by flood, not destroyed by flood, but by fire. And then he'll recreate it. There'll be no more oceans like it was originally. And then the city of New Jerusalem is going to come down to earth. It's 1,500 miles cubed. I mean, the Bible says there's 4 walls. It's cubed. The space shuttle used to fly between 150 and 300 miles up in the air. Think about how big 1,500 miles is. And it's 1,500 miles cubed. That's how big that city is.
Serious skyscraper.
Absolutely. And I'm going to give you a scripture that people get really upset about sometimes. But you know, we tend to talk about us as the bride of Christ. The Bible says the bride of Christ is that city. I'll show it to you. How can a city be a bride of Christ? I have no idea. Don't talk to the Lord, he can tell you. But 21, verses 9 and 10 says, "And there came unto me one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials full of the 7 last plagues, and talked with me, saying, Come here, I will show you the bride, the Lamb's wife." And then he says in verse 10, "And he carried me away in the spirit to a great and high mountain, and showed me that great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God." So he's calling that holy city as the bride of Christ. And don't ask me why, I don't understand, I don't know. I think we are likened to a bride with Christ. We're likened to, he's the bridegroom and all that. I don't understand this, and I don't make any presumptions that I do. So anyway, if you figure that out, let me know how a city can be the bride of Christ. That's what it says. I was reading some notes from a commenter, and he said, the bride of Christ is not, he gives 7 different things. It's not the Old Testament, not Israel in the Old Testament. It's not part of the New Testament church. It's not the whole New Testament church. It's not the 144,000 Jews we see in Revelation. And it's not the tribulation saints. It's not any single individual or any one special group of individuals out of the redeemed. And it's not one denomination or all the denominations combined. And he says what the bride of Christ is. He said it is that great city, the holy Jerusalem. And he references the scripture I just read. This is what the angel pointed out to John when he promised to show him the bride, the Lamb's wife, the holy city, the heavenly Jerusalem. And he says, what a simple revelation. He said, it is unscriptural to speak of any one company of redeemed as being the exclusive bride of Christ. If the city, the New Jerusalem, is the bride, then all who go to live in the holy city make up the bride and not just a part of it. So he says when we get to that city, if we make up that city, then we're part of the bride of Christ. So, I don't know. Anyway, it's kind of interesting. And he goes on and says, all redeemed will live in the city. He says, number 1, the Old Testament saints were promised the New Jerusalem. And he gives scripture. Number 2, the early church was promised the city. Every Christian is promised the city. The 144,000 Jews in Revelation will be there. And he says the tribulation saints will go there. Those are ones that are saved during the 7 years of trials and tribulation. And he says, therefore we conclude that since all saints in the first resurrection, from Abel to the last one saved in the future tribulation, will go to live in the New Jerusalem, that all such saints will be members of the bride. Not one person, group of persons, denomination, mansion, temple, or any other building can be called the city, the Lamb's wife. It takes all to be the city, the bride. And I'll stop there. He goes on more, talks about it, but it's kind of an interesting thing.
Who was that commentator?
Dave. Yeah. And I probably believe about 98% of everything he ever wrote. He wrote a ton of stuff, so pretty good stuff usually. He uses a lot of scriptures to back up everything he said. Matter of fact, when you read his books, you have to just, if you go check every reference he gives a verse, you'll never get through his books because he gives so many. You have to kind of pick and see which ones you want to look at. Let's go to Genesis chapter 9, verse 1. It says, then God blessed Noah and his sons. Pay attention to God blessed Noah and his sons, saying to them, be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth. The fear and dread of you will fall on all the beasts of the earth, and on all the birds in the sky, on every creature that moves along the ground, and on all the fish in the sea. They are given into your hands. Everything that lives and moves about will be food for you. Just as I gave you the green plants, I now give you everything. Have you ever noticed how wild animals are scared to death of humans?
Yeah.
I mean, I was watching the other day some video. They were using some night vision equipment. They were hunting coyotes, and there's cows out in this field and stuff, and the coyotes come right into the fields. And it's no big deal. I mean, cows are a lot bigger than we are, but God has put that fear in those animals. And I think, we're going to kill them and eat them. It's a big deal. But God put that fear in them. He did that for a reason. Now, notice right here that God said he blessed. In verse 1, God blessed Noah and his sons. We're going to come back to that in just a minute. It's very important to note that. Anybody ever heard of the Apocrypha and the Pseudepigrapha? Let me write this down for you. Start with Apocrypha.
You say that 10 times.
Yeah, really. Let's see. I ran across the Pseudepigrapha when I was going to college in Victoria, Texas. And then you have the Apocrypha, which is part of the Catholic Bible. Let's see, I think it's P-H-A. Anyway, these books say that when Noah landed on the dry land and stuff, that the angels came down and showed him and as to how to heal certain diseases and also how to use herbs and plants to make medicines to heal. Now, did that really happen? I think it probably did, but we don't know. I mean, the only thing that we don't know in our Bible doesn't have everything in there. I mean, because like the Bible said, if there was everything about the Lord, the earth couldn't hold the volumes. And so God's given us a handbook that's to lead us and guide us, and he puts everything we pretty much need in there. But some things we just don't know. But the pseudepigrapha and apocrypha have books that talk about it. Well, what are they? I'll tell you what the difference is. The apocrypha, there's 7 other books in the Catholic Bible, and these are what's called, what we group as the apocrypha. The Catholics call them the deuterocanonical books. And there's 7 books that we don't have in our Bible. They are 1 Esdras, 2 Esdras, Tobit, Judith, Wisdom of Solomon, Ecclesiasticus, Baruch, the letter of Jeremiah, prayer of Manasseh, 1st and 2nd Maccabees, and that's what we call the Apocrypha. Well, the problem with those is that there's several things in there that historically are not true and not accurate. So I think we have to kind of throw those out. But the Catholics believe they're part of the Bible. We don't typically, as Protestants, believe it. The pseudepigrapha is, they're pseudonymous writings, or they're basically what there are. They're writings that look like they're scriptural. I came across this book. It was about this thick, and it was published by Oxford in England when I was going to college. And it had like the book of Noah, the book of Mary, the Gospel according to Thomas, things like that. And the Dead Sea Scrolls, they found some of these also in those. But what it is, pseudo or pseudo, or however you want to pronounce it, means something that looks real, but it's not. It's a kind of a fake. Well, these books in the pseudepigrapha, which are just dozens of them, are books that look like they're scriptural, and they say that like somebody like Noah wrote them or something, like the Book of Enoch is another one. The Book of Enoch is actually referenced in the book of Jude in one verse. But as I read it, you have to judge it by the Bible we have now, I believe. The 66 books in the Bible we have, we judge those things according to that. And if they fit, they do. If they don't, I don't think they're scriptural. And there's a couple things in the Book of Enoch that made me think this is not scriptural. One of the books in the pseudepigrapha I was reading, it was talking about this one man. He was such a man of God. He was so holy that he couldn't even wear clothes because they would defile his body. He was so righteous. But when he died, he went to this special part of heaven that only people like him could go to. And even there, they couldn't wear robes or anything because they were just so holy. And it said every day they would pray the rosary. Well, what does that tell you? That tells you it's a Catholic story. And most of the books in the pseudepigrapha were written around 200 years after the death of Christ. And like I say, they're written to look like they're scriptural and all this stuff. And you'll see like on Discovery and History Channel and those, they'll have the lost books of the Bible. You ever seen programs like that? Number 2, or Volume 3, the lost books of the Bible. That's what they're doing, is they're looking at the pseudepigrapha mostly, sometimes the Apocrypha, and they're saying, oh, look what, Jesus was married. Jesus had a wife. He had children that succeeded him. You can't go by that. We've got to judge all those things by our Word of God. Boy, I don't know. I have no idea. Anybody know? When did they start using the rosary?
When did they start?
I have absolutely no idea.
Anybody who does 10 Hail Marys and only one Our Father?
Yeah.
I'm not okay.
Yeah. Well, and they miss it by Mary, Mother of God.
Yeah.
I mean, Mary was Jesus, the deity side of it. I mean, the humanity side of it, but not the Mother of God.
In the Bible, he calls her woman. He doesn't call her mother.
Yeah, he actually tells John, says, woman, behold your son, son, behold your mother. So, anyway, you have to really judge those. And like I say, there's a reason they're not in our Bible.
What was that council, 15, 17?
I can't hardly, I never can
That's
remember
when they
that.
sat down and tried to straighten it all out.
If you go on my website, huh? Yeah, that's one. They had 2 or 3. And they had like the first council and then the second council, they called them, I can't remember the names. But if you go on my website though, I've got a thing about how the Bible came to be. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot went into it. And you know, I really believe that God led those men. I think they were godly men. And he gave us exactly what we need. I believe that with all my heart. So anyway.
The rosary began to be used in the 3rd century BC.
Wow.
BC?
No, look at BC.
Yeah, the use of knighted prayer roads.
Oh, okay.
Christianity goes back to the Desert Fathers in the 3rd century.
This one says the modern version came in 1214.
1214.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I don't know. You know, it's what it is, I guess. And when you have well, I'm not gonna say anything. So, if you wanna go on the website on true sowers, and look at this lesson, lesson number 10. I've got a link here that gives a list of all the books in the Apocrypha, and then a bunch of them that are in the pseudepigrapha. But you got to remember, I mean, every book that comes up could be, now it could be thrown in the pseudepigraphas. I don't know how many actually are in that. The book that I found, I wanted to buy a copy, and you can't, it's not printed anymore. And I've never, ever seen another copy. And I even went to Oxford's website to try to find it. Can't find it. It'd be interesting to have, and there were some other books too that are claimed or say that Solomon wrote them, and don't read them, but they're the greater and the lesser books of Solomon. And basically what they are, they're witchcraft books. Solomon is such an interesting character to me. If you read the book of Ecclesiastes, when you read that, you have to be very careful not to make doctrine out of the book of Ecclesiastes. Because remember, he was the wisest man in the world. Remember, he had a dream, and the Lord came to him and said, have anything you want, just ask me. And he said, I want wisdom. Well, God was pleased with that. And along with wisdom came riches, came everything. Plus, all these leaders around the world, the known world, would say, hey, here's my daughter, take her, and give me some wisdom. Well, when he takes on these other daughters, he had 1,000 wives. He had 300 regular wives and 700 concubines. But as he did that, they brought their pagan religion in to his home. And that's why they were commanded then not to marry outside of the Jewish race. It was absolutely wrong for them to do that. And yet that's where his first sin started. And I'm sure it was a sexual sin, to be real honest with you. Anyway, so as he did that, as he gets older in life, you'll see one of the verses in Ecclesiastes, he said, vanity, vanity, all is vain. Well, it's not, the world's not vain, this life is not vain. But he was to the point, what's the use? Everything's a mess. And he just really got messed up. So he ends up apparently writing these books, the greater and the lesser keys of Solomon. And he's talking about these different spells you can do, these different evil spirits will do this, or this good spirit. It's just stuff you need to leave alone. And I mean, who knows if he even wrote it, but I really wonder if he's even in heaven. You never know. I think that Judas may have a better chance of being in heaven than Solomon. Isn't that crazy? So, it's hard to say. Yeah. It's really interesting. Anyway, so after Noah and his family got on dry land, God gave them 2 rules. He said not to eat meat with blood still in it. These are the only 2 rules he gave them. And the second one, he said not to shed the blood of men. And he said, because the Spirit of God is in man, that's what gives him life. Well, he also talks about the life is in the blood. So, when the blood's gone, what happens? The body can't live, can it? So that's where the life is. We're commanded not to drink blood. We're commanded not to eat meat with the blood in it. That's why you see when someone kills an animal, they drain the blood. They always do. So if you go to Africa, though, what do you call them, Barb? The guys in the red? Maasai. The Maasai tribe. They'll take it and they'll shoot a spear at a cow's neck up here in the jugular vein, and they'll drink that blood. And I think a lot of times it's survival. It's not a religious right or something. When they're out there hunting, like the Indians used to have to do that in Texas. Right, you gotta have some kind of liquid. So, but we're commanded not to do that as Christians. So, anyway, that was 2 rules they were given. Let's start in Genesis 9:11. And God goes on, he says, I establish my covenant with you. Never again will all life be destroyed by the waters of a flood. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth. And the sign of that covenant is the rainbow. And you know what? How dare the certain group that we have now take our rainbow and make it something that it's not. That offends me to no end. Your children grow up, you teach them what the rainbow is, and then you see them at the gay rallies. And they've actually hijacked the rainbow, which is really sad.
That's what they do is have on your car a rainbow with scripture.
That's good.
That's what they do.
Because people are going to think the other, you see it. Yeah.
Well, they don't stop there. The marriage between man and woman is, in their eyes, is not sanctified,
And you know what's happening with all that is younger Christians, is they're not taught to stand on God's Word, and that God's Word is unchangeable. They think, well, we need to rewrite the Bible because it's not right. We can't stand against homosexuality because they just love each other. So, eventually you watch, they'll start printing Bibles that take all those references out.
Do you remember Pastor Hughes did about 4 years ago? He had 20 people on stage. And I forget the exact dates, but he said, 1950, 18 of the 20 in this country are Christian. Then went to 1964, there was like maybe 15, and it went down, down, down. This generation, according to Pastor Hughes, out of 20 people, how many are Christians? 1. And then what he said after that was, what about the next generation?
That's
The
That
Christ.
was a great object.
That's where it was awesome.
Awesome.
It's coming.
Right, and that's, that'll be true hell on earth when there's no last. True hell on earth.
Yeah. And the Bible says that they will kill us as Christians thinking they're doing God a favor.
Yeah.
That's coming.
John 16:1, brother.
Yeah, coming soon. So let's go on with verse 18. It says in Genesis 9, it says, the sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan, just remember that. These were the three sons of Noah, and from them came the people who were scattered over the whole earth. All of us know that every one of us here came from Ham, Shem, and Japheth, right? We all came through Noah, we all came through them. It says in verse 20, Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. When he drank some of its wine, he became drunk and lay uncovered inside his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father naked and told his two brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it across their shoulders. Then they walked in backward and covered their father's naked body. Their faces were turned the other way so that they would not see their father naked. Verse 24 says, when Noah awoke from his wine and found out what his youngest son had done to him, that's important, he said, cursed be Canaan. We're going to find in a minute why he cursed Canaan and not Ham. Canaan was Ham's son. The lowest of slaves will he be to his brothers. He also said, praise be to the Lord and the God of Shem. May Canaan be the slave of Shem. May God extend Japheth's territory. May Japheth live in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be the slave of Japheth. After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. Noah lived a total of 950 years, then he died. Now, why did Noah get drunk? He was a righteous man, wasn't he? The Bible says God found favor in him, or he found favor in God.
You must have really liked the wine.
He didn't know.
It was so
There was no
fresh, he
fermentation,
just
right?
started drinking.
What happened before the flood, like we talked about, God had put this band of moisture in the air, and it covered the earth. It was this thick water that covered the earth. The Bible talks about the water in the earth and above the earth. Well, apparently it didn't allow anything to ferment. There was no rainbow before that. We know what causes a rainbow. It's the diffraction of the light, or you call that, the scientific term. All of you have probably held a little prism and seen it bend the light in the rainbow colors. Well, there was no light like that before. We had light, but not enough to probably to ferment things. And it says he was a man of the earth. He was a planter. So he planted a vineyard. And I'm sure he had drank grape juice plenty of times before. And this time he drinks it, and he's wiped out. And he didn't know. He was a righteous man.
Why was
He's not sinless though.
He's what?
He's not sinless, he could have gotten
Well,
drunk.
that's true. Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah, it could.
there's nobody in the Bible that all of God's heroes we always see their sin.
That's right.
Okay,
That is
so
true.
and so because they're not perfect,
Right.
there's not a single one in there.
Yeah. And that's true. We just don't know.
We don't.
But I would assume that he was righteous. But you could very well. He could.
Well, I'm sure that sometime between the flood and his death he sinned.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely human. Yeah.
But this may not be the same, he's called the same.
Right.
So it might have been just a pet.
Yeah. Well, we talked about Hebrews 11, the Heroes of Faith chapter, and we talked about every Tuesday night how, you look at those people, man, they were messed up. And yet God called them his heroes of faith. Matter of fact, we look, because God changed them, and what they became was better than what they'd been. And of course, we can all fit in that. But whatever caused it, here he was drunk. And it says that Ham went in and saw his father's nakedness. And I had never heard this while I was sitting there, I'll tell you that for sure. But he said he went and told his brothers, and I'm sure he was out there laughing about it, carrying on, and making a fool of his dad. Well, Shem and Japheth went in backwards, covered his father up. But they believed that one of two things happened he said when Noah found out what Ham had done to him. Well, one argument, which I believe is probably true, they believed that Ham raped him. And the second one said, I've heard that they think he castrated him. Well, I don't see that anywhere. But because of whatever it was, and there's no proof either way, whatever it was, he cursed Canaan, Ham's son. Why would he do that? Why wouldn't he curse Ham himself?
Because he knew it would hurt Ham a lot more if his son was cursed.
Well, that's probably true
You
too.
both.
Well, if you read back to verse 1 of chapter 9, God had blessed Noah and Ham, Japheth, and Shem. So God had already blessed him. So I think that's probably why he kept blessed. He cursed his son and down because God had already blessed him. He couldn't overcome that blessing. So anyway, he cursed him. And like I said, that's the only thing I can come up with the reason why he would have done that. But something happened. We don't know exactly what. I tend to think what I heard is probably true.
So the only thing we know is that he he looked at it.
What's that?
All it says is that he looked
He
at it.
saw it, yeah. Then he went out to his brothers.
That's all we know.
Right,
For sure.
right.
But why would he curse somebody if just by?
Right, that's what the argument is about the other people, that something happened there.
That's what she just said.
Well, see, and Noah said when he found out what he had done, when he realized
Right,
what he had done. So, I think that's where you get it. Well, anyway, we know that Ham was the father of the black race. And then we're not sure about Shem and Japheth, they kind of go, but I'm going to tell you where all their children went and where their people went. I've got a list of all of it here. Japheth, first of all, we'll start with him. Japheth means enlargement or extension. And I'm going to read from what this says. It says, indeed, his posterity spread all over the earth. 14 descendants, 7 sons and 7 grandsons are listed. The first one was Gomer, and it says he was the progenitor of the ancient Galatians and Phrygians, from which came the natives of northern Europe, known as the Gauls and the Celts, which that would be Ireland, that kind of thing. I mean, that's kind of what I would consider. And it says in the later times, the Germans, French, Welsh, Irish, Britons, and various other Anglo-Saxon races. These all came from the 3 sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah. Now, Magog was the second son. We know about Gog and Magog in Revelation. Magog is talking about like Moscow and Russia, in that area that's going to come down against Israel. It says he's the progenitor of the Scythians and Tartars, whose descendants are predominant in modern Russia. Magog was also a general name of the country north of the Caucasus Mountains, which are between the Black and the Caspian Seas. So we know that's from Russia. Madai, which was another son, the third one, is a progenitor of the ancient Medes or Persians, which is Iran, and perhaps the Hindus, which would be over into India. Javan was the 4th son, the progenitor of the Greeks, Italians, Spaniards, Portuguese, and other nations through Elisha, Tarshish, and Dodanian. These crazy names. And it talks about some people in the Mediterranean coast area too. The 5th son, Tubal, these are all sons of Japheth, was a progenitor of the Iberians, Georgians, which is part of Russia, Cappadocians, and other Asiatic and European races. Meshech, another son, was the progenitor of the Muscovite tribes that now inhabit Russia. So we're kind of seeing where all these sons went. Tyrus was the progenitor of the Thracians and perhaps the Etruscans who migrated to Italy. So these are all the sons of Jacob, like I said. And that's probably most of us in here. The sons of Ham, the first son was Cush. He started the Ethiopian tribes that settled south of Egypt and also overran Arabia, Babylonia, and India. Mizraim, progenitor of the various Egyptian tribes. Mizraim means double. Tribes of the double Egypt, Upper and Lower Egypt, called the land of Ham, came from him. The Philistines also came from Mizraim. We know about the Philistines, don't we? Bad people. That's who the giant Goliath was part of. Phut, P-H-U-T, was progenitor of the Libyans and other tribes in northern Africa. Canaan was the progenitor of peoples that settled mainly in Palestine, which is now Israel, Arabia, Tyre, Sidon, and other parts of the land promised to Abraham. These nations are often mentioned in connection with Israel. So these are the sons of Ham. And Shem, the second son of Noah, his first son, Elam, was the progenitor of the Elamites who settled near the Persian Gulf, which is present-day Iran, Iraq, that area. Asher was the progenitor of the Assyrians. We know about the Assyrians. They were bad people too. They were, I guess, away from God. Arphaxad was the progenitor of the Israelites, the Arabians, the Edomites, the Moabites, the Ammonites. That was all the people in that area of Israel now. It's funny, when you look back in the Bible like that, they talk about the kings and all this stuff. A kingdom may have been over a 50 square mile area. That they really were very small. And they talk about how that, you had Israel and you had Judah. Well, that was this one country that would fit the Texas Panhandle of Texas that was cut in two. But each of those groups, they had different areas that were different kingdoms and had different kings. And back then you had horses. You traveled by foot or by horse or something.
You're limited by your travel transportation.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why they were small.
Plane.
Yeah, we can ride halfway around the world in half a day, or around a day. So, a whole different world, isn't it? It's just amazing. Lud was the progenitor of the Lydians of Asia Minor, and that would be Chaldea and Persia, which around Iran again. And Aram, the last one, he was the father of the Syrians. How many of you know the Bible says that Damascus, which is the capital of Syria, the prophecy says it will be completely destroyed.
Isaiah 18 is it?
I can't remember exactly, but that's about right. And we're seeing that, aren't we?
Yes, sir.
In the news.
It's all that on the website too?
Yeah, that's all on the list. It's all right there. But I think that's interesting. You see modern day prophecy coming about, all these, matter of fact, I don't know if you guys ever seen on the news, they drop those barrel bombs out of helicopters. Devastating. It's just, oh, it's terrible. And then I was watching a thing on 60 Minutes a couple weeks ago where they sprayed sarin gas. It's one of the most awful things. I would not recommend anybody here see it. 60 Minutes, I'm sure they toned it down. One of the most terrible things I've ever seen in my life. And they say that it makes your muscles contract so bad that your bones will break. And then people just die.
There's one bomb that it drops and it just sucks the air out of it.
Yeah.
It doesn't explode anything. I don't know what that was.
Yeah, they did that, what they call it, the mother of all bombs,
Yeah,
the Moab bomb.
yeah.
It was like a 2,000 pound or 4,000 pound bomb, and this is that. They were using those in Afghanistan too, where they all what is his name? Bin Laden. When they were hiding in the caves.
Caves, yeah.
They would hit those caves with the bomb and it would suck all the air out and they would suffocate and die. Isn't that crazy? I mean, the weapons of war, thank God those things can be done away with some time. But it's just awful. Anybody have any questions about this? We're going to talk next week about, actually open up to Genesis 10:25 real quick. Let's look at that. And the next week we're going to talk about the Tower of Babel. I'll get my Bible. It might be, to make sure. I have to go look to make sure. I can remember so many scriptures in the Bible that give the reference.
Jack and Barbara.
Yeah, I'm sure that was one. But we'd be the ones that were all messed up, that's for sure. Not me, but Barbara. Let me see. No, it's 25.
Yeah.
Genesis 10:25 says, Eber had two sons. The first was named Peleg, which means division. For during his lifetime, the people of the world were divided into different language groups. His brother's name was Joktan. The King James doesn't say that. It says the earth was divided. Other Bibles, I realize when they write things like this, it's commentators that are writing these things. It's good to go back if you can, look at the Hebrew and see what it really says. But it says the earth, eretz in the Hebrew, physical earth, dirt, that kind of stuff, was separated. And this is before the Tower of Babel. So what he's trying to say there is that during this guy's lifetime, all these languages were separated. That's not true. It was done, and we'll see next time later on it was done. We believe this is when the earth was separated, when it was pushed into continents. The continents were separated and mountains were pushed up and all that. And that's why a lot of scholars, I also believe that the earth was not like it is now. It was much flatter. It was easier for that flood to flood it. But it was during this time of Peleg that the earth was divided and separated.
And that was before the Tower of Babel?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we'll see next week, we'll go into the Tower of Babel with Nimrod and some of those. And Nimrod, of course, was very, very evil. Matter of fact, he hunted men. That was one of his things, not just hunt animals, but hunt men. He was an evil guy. So anybody have any questions about all that or comments? Or?
So before the Tower of Babel or before all that division, everybody had the same language, understood everybody?
Yep.
Well, what gets me, if we all broke up in here and 10 years later we get together, how would we come up with all these weird languages like Chinese, Mandarin Chinese? How do you figure that out when you're all speaking one language?
Generations though.
Huh?
Generations, not a short period.
Okay.
Well, God did that. God said
Still, that's some
Yeah,
weird
it's just like
thinking.
that.
Even over generations, how you, if we use the word dog for dog, how it becomes blah, 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 whatever, in all those different languages.
God did it.
And then there's the day of Pentecost.
Well, it's like your wife just said, it happened just like that, the Tower of Babel. God said, man is getting to the point he can do too much. And look what's happening now. They have an
That's where
article.
tongues
that-
came from now.
What?
That's the first instance of tongues. Look, they speak in different tongues.
I just read a few weeks ago on the news that they realize now if they can lengthen our chromosomes, that we can live forever. And there's a guy that's going to do a surgery, pretty much when he gets the money, he's going to do a head transplant on the body. And the whole goal is so we can live forever. That's the guy, he may be in Italy. Yeah, they did a monkey in like 1962, 63, somewhere around there. They literally transplanted the head of a monkey to another body. And it worked so well, the thing bit them when they were trying to calm it down. It was mad. And so they know they can do it. Matter of fact, he says it can be done in a couple hours. They can put it. And so
No, thank you.
Well, you think about it, if the Tower of Babel, we're talking about how they produced so much, and God said, look, I've got stock in it. That's why he scrambled the language.
Yes, sir.
And it's getting that way again. That's just another reason I believe Jesus is coming soon.